Welcome to another episode of Jamming with Jason. Hey, all of you that have been listening for a while, you know that sometimes I'm kind of like a little Renaissance man. I just love learning about all different things. I've had lots of different experiences and then try to pull a lot of the stuff together. And so I'm really excited about today's episode because I have Nina Hermann with me, who she's a lot like me in that way. As I start talking to her, I'm like, holy shit, girl, I can't believe you know all this stuff or you've done all these things. So I'm excited to have her here with me to talk a little bit more and share some information with you that will help make your life better. And the fact that you're listening to this right now means there's something in this episode today that you need to hear and something that you probably need to share with your friends and family as well. So when you get done listening to this episode, make sure and share it with those people that you love. Hell, you can even share it with people you don't love as well. So with that, let's roll the episode. All right, Nina. Crack
Awesome,
myself up, crack yourself up. I mean, this is kind of like, this is good stuff. No, I'm excited. We've known each other for a little while, but I didn't know that much about you, right, until we were talking a little bit before we hit record. So I'm really excited to share your path, your knowledge, kind of some of the stuff that you're doing with people, and what you've learned, because to me it's just fascinating. And again, we could be here for 4 hours. We can't be here for 4 hours today, so maybe you'll have to come back later. But how do maybe you can start off just kind of introducing yourself a little bit. I mean, when you kind of introduce yourself, how do you describe that, and then we can kind of jump into some of the twists and turns in your life that have kind of gotten you to where you are today.
Sure. I'm a girl on a mission to heal myself, is really what it
Ooh.
boils down to. And as I do, then I want to share what I've learned with everybody else, because I truly believe we all have the ability to heal ourselves. And I have been in some arguments about that, but because I don't have a white coat, but if I can
Hey. You
first,
don't need a white coat,
I don't,
okay?
exactly,
You don't need
exactly.
a white coat. That's a structure that people put in place to monopolize and make more money, but you don't need a white coat
Absolutely.
to help people.
100%. So the argument is, because I don't have a white coat, that I don't know I don't know enough about my body. And I argue that that is the exact first place that I should be going, is internal, before I seek the white coat, because who knows myself better than me. So so that's really why I have entered into so many different programs and certifications, and have just been in this evolution of learning to be able to apply to myself and be able to help others, because I would love to see a world where people are healed mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, so that they can love and accept themselves, and then be able to love and accept other people, so that we can all live vibrantly.
Well, and I love that because that's one of my goals and missions too, right? And I think it's important, like you said, that what a lot of people don't realize is you can't truly love other people unless you love yourself, right? And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I wanted to go back just kind of quickly because I get the sense that you're kind of like me as well, right? I don't have a white coat either, but I also don't talk to people or teach people or share with people things that I haven't done on myself, right? So I'm like a lab rat. And literally, that was one of my jobs, folks. When I was going to college, I was a lab rat for the psychology department.
Oh,
A
well.
lot of people don't know that, but yeah. So I've been a lab rat and actually gotten paid to be a lab rat. But I do that on myself, right? Before I share with people, because I know, like, you were in a music class that I did. I'm not a trained musician, but I've used it, and I'm just sharing how it's helped me or what it's done for me. And I get the sense you're the same kind of person. You're learning all these things, you're testing them out on yourself, you're seeing what works, and then you're just sharing with other people what's been working for you in case it works for them.
Absolutely.
So I think it's interesting, and maybe we can go here because again, we talked a little bit before we hit record and have known each other for a little while. But I think it's interesting, that you say, and I love this. I'm a girl on a mission to heal myself. Okay, so girl on a mission to heal herself means there's probably some things in your life. There's some things that you've experienced in your life that you need healing from, right? And I think we all are that way. We all go through different things, but maybe to help us understand you better, and maybe help some of the people who are listening to relate to you, for what you feel comfortable with.
Sure.
But maybe kind of share with people, what are some of the things that you've gone through that you're healing from? Because I think it always helps other people, because so much of the time we think, I'm the only one that's ever done this or felt this way. And until we say it out of our mouth, and then it's like half the world goes, me too, me too, me too, right?
Right. Gosh, where to begin? As a child, if I look back at my childhood, I always think of myself as sad. And it wasn't until I understood the relationship of a mother with a child in the womb and what happens while the mother is pregnant with the child, that those emotions impact that baby. And so when my mother was pregnant with me, my grandmother committed suicide. Mm. And I can just remember, and so I've done some healing around that piece with her. And so that sadness as a child is what I initially remember. And then I also was born with some learning disabilities. So when I went off to school, I have, they didn't know it at the time, but it's a form of dyslexia called non-phonemic awareness, where I don't process sounds very well. So it's very fascinating to me that was in your sound healing. Well, I refer to it as a sound healing workshop. Because I love music, but I don't necessarily, I couldn't tell you tones and those kind of things, but I just love how it makes me feel and the healing aspect of music. But because of that disability, I was always taken out in remedial classes, really up until high school. And then I got bullied because of that. And because of how I would pronounce words, I got made fun of. So I just shut up. I wouldn't talk. So much of my life, I can just remember like people being like, can you just speak, say something? And, like I would just be fearful of saying something because I didn't know or have the right words to say what I wanted to say and know how to pronounce them without them making fun of me. So being a sad, bullied child, and then my parents, I love them to death. I have I had amazing family life, but we were raised in a very strict religious church, and it was very regimented, very judgmental. And I never felt like I could fit in. I always felt as though I was never enough to be a part of that group within our church, but I was never bad enough, so to say, to be with my secular friends in the school. So I felt like I never fit in anywhere, that it was never enough, that I could never do everything right. And so I'd say those three things are what I have been working on overcoming. And, there's a lot there to unpack. Of experiences that have happened from that. But those are the three big ones that I've really worked to overcome.
Well, and as you're sitting there talking about them, it's I can relate. It was a little bit a little bit different for me, but remembering a sad childhood, some different traumas or other things that were going on around that time. It's like my mother she was older. I mean, at the time, like having a baby at 36 is not a big deal now, right? I mean, but at the time it was like, holy smokes,
Yeah.
your womb isn't dried up already. but it was the fact that, she'd gone 11 years between my next oldest sibling, right? So she was told she couldn't have any more babies, and now all of a
Mm.
sudden she gets pregnant, right? So there was some of that stuff that's kind of in there, but there were times as a child when I felt sad too, right? There were times in my childhood where I was bullied. It wasn't because of the pronunciation, but because I was kind of a weird kid. I had big ears. I was smart. I was a little bit nerdy, but I kind of got bullied too, right? For different reasons. I was always taught to kind of, children are to be seen and not heard. So, for a long time, I wouldn't speak up or speak my opinions. I was always kind of in the corner, right? Felt like you didn't fit in, strict religious upbringing. I love how you said that too, right? Like you're not really quite good enough, but it's not like you're with the sinners either, right? And I get
Right.
it. I get it. It's like I was a good kid, but I wasn't. I know what you're talking about, right? And so again, even though we had some different experiences, I think what you just described there, almost everybody listening has probably experienced some of those things, right? So we all kind of have
Mm.
some of this baggage coming through. So how have you kind of gone forward? Because I know you've had like kind of a wild career ride, like completely different careers and everything else too, and in a lot of the stuff that you've learned as well, right? And I think what you do a good job of as well is you've learned a lot about different things, and then you kind of try to pull some of these good pieces or things from these different modalities and kind of pull them together into what you're working on for yourself and what you're using to help other people with. So maybe kind of talk a little bit about, how did you kind of get through all this craziness to where you're at too? Because I sit here and I talk to you and I'm like, I know Nina's not 100 years old, but how did she do all the stuff she's done, right? In the short amount of time that you've done it.
Yeah, I am older than I look. Um, so in college I did the ROTC program
Yep.
and went into the army. And a lot of why I did that is, I mean, I did have my reasons, but the base of it was that I knew I needed something to force me out of my comfort zone because I knew I had a big mission and I knew I needed to be able to speak and I needed to be able to flourish outside of my comfort zone. And what way to do it than to force myself in the military, right? Um, that's what I did.
That's
And the other piece of it is my brother, when I went off to the first basic leadership camp, my brother told me that I couldn't do it and that I was going to be home shortly. And I was out to prove him wrong. And so even though I wanted to quit so badly, and there was like a ridiculously high amount of people that did quit during that program. And I was like, my bunkmate quit. I was like, I'm not quitting. I cannot let my brother be right. Um, so I finished and did that. Which was a great experience. It did force me outside of my comfort zone. It gave me a wealth of experience. But I did end up in a significant amount of pain, which is interesting because I went from this very strict religious environment, right, to an environment that's very strict with rules and regiments. And I was talking to a friend last night, in fact, that I only survived because I was always in remote detachments. I was not in a typical regimented, like Fort Bragg or Fort Campbell unit that, not that I didn't have rules to follow, but it was just a little bit of a different pace. So
well, you guys were
a
playing under some different rules based on
little bit, yeah.
what you were attached to. Yeah.
Right. So after 7 years, my body was just plagued with pain. I had neck pain, back pain, my arms, my hands, my feet, like my whole body. Some would call it fibromyalgia. I just had so much pain, and the Army's answer was medication. So for 4.5 years, I did 3 types of pain meds, an anti-inflammatory, muscle relaxer, and a pain twice a day, every day for 4.5 years. And I knew I knew it wasn't helping. It was only taking the edge off my pain. It wasn't healing me, and it was causing my body to be so toxic. And I started seeking alternatives. So I got out, I started seeking alternative forms of therapy. And it's a longer story about how I came into rolfing, but I found a rolfer. I moved to Alaska, and I had gotten a job with a general contractor, military contractor in Alaska. They had me move out there on this island of 8,000 people. And I'm with the realtor. We're searching for a place to live. And there's a Rolf. We come to a stoplight, and there's a Rolf studio right there. And I was like, are you kidding me? There's Rolfing here on this island of 8,000 people. And they had just opened. I was like, okay, they're here just for me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So they also taught yoga. They introduced me to yoga. Yeah, Crystal is still very much of one of my mentors today. But I was roughed by her. It took off a significant amount of my pain. I then became a rougher. And what I would say and how I describe roughing for those that aren't familiar with it is like what a chiropractor does with bones. We do a soft tissue. It is like a massage in the sense that we're working with the body and the tissues, but we're working with the fascia. The fascia connects the body head to toe, and it surrounds every muscle fiber, every muscle group, every nerve, every organ, every bone in the body, and allows for fluidity of movement. There was a time when, in surgery, they would like just scrape away the fascia because they didn't understand the importance of it. But now there's more and more research and how important this fascia is to our body and to our healing. So Roffer strategically worked with the body to help with the structural alignment of the body. Through that, I started noticing imbalances in strength that was causing an impact. So I became a certified personal trainer. And from that, I started noticing that even though structural alignment looked on point, there was still pain. And so I started studying food healing because I noticed it was what people were eating. I had opened a food truck in the midst of that because the foods that I was recommending and the foods that we needed, it wasn't readily available in places. And I knew people wouldn't take the time to prepare the foods if it wasn't available. So I had this whole plan in how I was going to implement it, but it was well ahead of my time. It didn't survive. I lost so much money in doing that process, but and then I became an integrative nutrition health coach to try to help people coach, because what I recognize is your structural alignment can be perfect. You can eat all the organic, nutritious foods, and you could exercise to your heart content and still be diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So it really had so much to do with mindset and how you perceive and your perception of life and how you live. So I wanted to be able to work with people in that way. That was my intent anyway. But I noticed at the time I was attracting clients that wanted pills. They wanted a quick fix. They still wanted to run to a doctor and get a prescription that was going to help them. They didn't want to change their lifestyle. And, I recognize that if that's the client that I'm attracting, then there's something in me that still it needs to be healed, that's why I'm attracting that client. So I took a break from the healing world and went into real estate, and then just continued to work on myself, went to different programs, did the Landmark Forum, which is incredible, learned about German New Medicine, which we may talk about later, and just worked on myself while I earned an income in real estate. And then when COVID happened, recognized, whoa, I need to go back into healing, because we had not even begun to see the crisis because of how they were handling it with the fear and the isolation, amongst other things. But and so I'm now coming back into this healing space to be able to help people with the subconscious and how we perceive life so that they can heal physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And I've done so in different ways of learning how to energetically work with the subconscious through different modalities. That's a
Well,
long-winded answer for you.
no, but I think it gives people kind of an idea, like I was telling you before. I mean, what I find and that I applaud you for, right, is it's like every time when you realize that you need something, you learn how to do it to help you heal and fix yourself, right? Where again, most people are like, "No, doctor, give me a pill," right? And I love that, where you said that it was taking the edge off the pain, but it wasn't healing, right?
Mhm.
And how many of us are doing that, where we're numbing, we're taking a little bit of the edge off, but we're not actually healing. And what you're doing, again, you're a girl who's trying to heal yourself, right? And so I think it's beautiful, but I think too it's what you just described there is your pathway as well. Is I think so much of the time we can't understand why we go down a certain path until we've been down the path, right?
Mhm.
And what's interesting, there was a reason why you left and went into real estate for a while. Hey, real estate's fun. I did it for a while, right? I
Yeah.
might do some of it again, but well, it's curious and I think synchronistic, right? That you were able to do that for a while and continued to, prepare yourself for what was going to come. Because like you said, COVID, who gives a shit about the little virus? That is not the societal and health impact that little fucking thing had on everything. It's the mental well-being, it's the fear, it's the anxiety that surrounded all of that. It's the isolation that it has caused in all of us. We used to give people hugs and shake hands, and now even still people are afraid to do some of those basic human contact things because of this, right? So
Right.
to me, it's like, thank you, Nina.
Oh.
Now, entree, because a whole lot more people need your help, but you've also had, you know, more years of experience and learning to be able to help pull a lot of these modalities together. Because that's what I see. A lot of people are like, they just go and they do one modality, right? Where it's like, acupuncture, hypnosis, massage, rolfing, chiropractic, whatever, right? These are all different modalities. Some work better for some people. Some people need a combination of different things. So I love that you're kind of pulling together a lot of this stuff.
I don't believe that there's any wrong or bad healer. I'll put it that way. Um, and we need people like me who like to, that's just the way that I am. And I fit a piece of the puzzle. And somebody who's only does chiropractic or only does massage, they're fitting a piece of the puzzle as well. And I feel as though everybody is on this healing journey, and whoever we resonate with, like my journey has led me, put on all these lenses and has led me to where I am now. And the people that resonate with me will resonate with me. But somebody else who's been on a journey and is only doing massage, there's people that will resonate with them and they're part of that person's journey. And so no matter what the experience is with any healer, I feel like it's part of their journey. It
Mm-hmm.
gave them some glimpse into their own life, that they can then move on to another person. And I'll have people that will say, well, I wish I wouldn't have done this. I should have gone straight to done this type of healing. Well, you wouldn't have been ready for that healing
Right.
potentially without having done that other work. So I don't believe, and it's taken me a long time to get to this point, because there was a long time when I was really upset with myself for having done all of these different things, right? Like if I had just focused on just rolfing, where could I be now, right? And I beat
Mm,
myself up about having, done all these different things and have invested money in all of these different things, right? But my journey has led me here because there's people that need and will resonate with me because of the journey that I've been on, which is where everybody is. And I know we didn't talk about this, but one of the things that I do have a vision for is a self-healing collaborative where people who have healed themselves can come and share and help others heal in the same way that they healed themselves, so that people who are searching for that assistance or wanting to be able to learn how to heal themselves can learn from other people. And then healers, most healers will understand that it's the individual who's healing themselves. We're just, sometimes we need guides, sometimes we need a little influence, right? But healers themselves can come in and kind of, share their input as well. And if somebody resonates with them. So I'm wanting to create this collaborative where people can help each other heal ourselves, because it's really a responsibility in and of ourselves. And I was working with a branding person. I was like, I want it kind of like a warrior vibe, because it really takes, it's triumphant when you can really take ownership and power of healing yourself, but it's for the courageous who are willing to kind of dig deep into themselves and their life and their perceptions and really work on themselves. And I totally got off on a tangent. I don't remember how I even got here,
Well,
but
no,
um,
because I think that's great because, like you said, you do have to be a warrior to do it. You have to take responsibility. You have to do the work. I mean, a lot of these things that we're talking about are things that a lot of people call practices, right? And it's no different than physical training. If you don't do push-ups every day or go for a walk every day,
ugh,
right? Those are practices. I know I'm the same way, right? It's like, God damn, I don't want to do that. But there are things that we have to practice, we have to exercise, if you will, and use. But I think what's beautiful and like what you said is there's so many people out there that make people feel like, oh, you have to use me, you have to come to me to do all this stuff. And again, there's some modalities like I do crack my own back, right? I mean, I've learned how to do
awesome.
that. I don't go to the chiropractor anymore, but that's an example where a lot of times you'd have to go to the chiropractor. If you're going to go to an acupuncturist or a rolfer, you're going to need somebody else because some of these things we can't do for ourselves. But a lot of the things we can learn from others and then do for ourselves, right? And that's why I love this idea of your self healing collaborative. So keep me informed on that too, right?
Yeah,
Because I think that's, if we can teach people, right, what they need to know and then allow the people to actually heal themselves, that's the trick,
yeah,
right? Because then you're giving everybody the power to be able to do it themselves.
yeah.
And I know because I know as we were talking about it, and you've kind of gone through a lot of these different modalities, and as we were talking about it, a lot of it really comes back to a lot of the mindset kinds of things. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the German New Medicine because again, as we were talking before we hit record, pretty amazing on some of the research. So I'm just going to tee this up for everybody who's listening. Right? Is what we're going to say here. Some of you are going to think we're completely full of shit. Okay, but I'm telling you, there's been a bunch of research done on this, and you might not believe it, but your mental well-being has a huge impact on your physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being as well, right? That they're all connected.
100%.
So maybe talk a little bit about that, because again, you became aware of this German New Medicine concept, right? And so maybe just kind of explain what it is and how the development is and what they were kind of finding out, about some of this stuff in a new way of trying to help people heal.
Sure. Um, every journey that I've been on has all been very synchronistically. It's all synchronistically come together. And I met this woman, Andy Lochner Mears, and very synchronistically, and she teaches German New Medicine here in the United States. And when I was married at one time, and he was diagnosed with cancer while we were separated. And I had come across this book that discussed German New Medicine. And I had gone to him and I was like, hey, like the trauma that we've been through, we can heal this. And, he wasn't all that interested. He didn't believe it and kind of gave me the shoulder. And so I was like, okay, it's not my journey. I'm going to let it go. And I meet Andy. We had a phone conversation first. And she's telling me what she did. And she was telling me about this doctor. And I was like, what was the doctor's name? And she tells me, and I go and pull that book off the shelf. And
so it was a book. It was the doctor of the book that you already had. Okay.
Right. And I was like, are you kidding me? And so, anyway, so that's how I came to meet Andy. And so as she's teaching me, and I'll give you an example. And I'm so excited about it. I don't even know where to begin. And I feel like I've, so doctor from Germany, his son, unfortunately was shot while on vacation and later died 4 months later. And he and his wife were both diagnosed with cancer. And the doctor said, okay, is this coincidence or what we just went through with our son caused this cancer? And this happened in the 70s. He spent the rest of his life, studied over 40,000 cases, and in 100% of those 40,000 cases, there was a shock, trauma, conflict in that person's life prior to their diagnosis. And it wasn't just the event that happened, but it's how someone perceives, their perception, how their psyche perceived that trauma, shock, or conflict. So the same people with the same type of perception, how their psyche perceived it, had the same lesion in the brain in the same area of the body impacted. This wasn't just cancer. This is really like anything. And so he has it so mapped out, and that you can even go to their site and look up, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. And it'll tell you a little bit about what type of conflict that you're dealing with, right? And when you resolve that conflict, then it heals your body, because your body does one of three things. So when it experiences shock, conflict, or trauma, your body's always trying to keep you safe, right? It's always trying to do whatever it can to help itself. And so what it knows to do when you're experiencing that is either cell loss, cell growth, or loss of function of an organ. And then once you resolve it, then it does the exact opposite. Where it had cell growth, now it has cell loss, because it's bringing it back into homeostasis and so forth. And so when you understand what's happening in your body, you understand where it's at in its process, and you can help it along and work through it. So it's an ability that you can heal yourself. And so I'll give you an example. So when I was at a podcast event with Andy, and she's explaining to me more in depth about German medicine. And I was dealing with interstitial cystitis, which is like bladders or ulcers on the bladder. And I had been in a flare for a couple of years, and on and off at different levels of intensity. And I was on a flare at that moment in time when she's teaching me. And she was telling me about like a bank robbery, and how the different people in the bank robbery can be experiencing different things, or they perceive it differently. And there could be somebody who has a death fright conflict that they're going to, their life is going to end through this, or they could be somebody that's territorial, like, this is my bank, this is my town, how dare you come into my bank? There could be someone with separation. There's so many different, I think there's like 24, 25 different perceptions. And the person with the territorial conflict ended up with bladder issues. And so I'm thinking about this, and I was like, but I'm not territorial. And she had explained, okay, well, it's bound, it could be boundaries too. But I started thinking about it, I'm like, oh my word, I am so territorial. There's so many things that I'm territorial about. And so I spent the next week like really diving into it, really meditating on it, really working through like my territory issues. And my symptoms went away within 1 week. I didn't have a flare again for almost 2 years. And that flare happened when I was living on Anna Maria Island, and my landlord is like, hey, Nina, I'm really sorry, but I have to take advantage of this real estate market, and I'm going to have to sell, and you're going to have to move. Even though I know I told you could stay here for the next year. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? Because in this real estate market, I didn't want, the rent had like doubled or tripled in some areas. I didn't want to be forced to buy a place in like such a short notice and in this market. And I was like, what am I going to do? And so I was in this frenzy trying to figure it out. And sure enough, my interstitial cystitis kicks back in. But this time I had the tools. I knew exactly what I had to do. And so I spent the next week working, meditating, and working through it. And sure enough, it was gone within a week. And so I have a number of examples. That's just one big one that I have, but of how I've been able to utilize German medicine to really improve my life. And for those that have had interstitial cystitis, you can claim a disability for it. It's debilitating pain. So it was a significant improvement for my life. And I've seen it in multiple ways, and I've utilized it, especially when something acute happens. Like right now, I'm going through the flu, which I consider as a body upgrade, right? Because I know healing happens in a liquid state. So in that phase where some things resolved for me, a conflict that I was going through resolved for me in the last week. And so now my body is healing. It has to send glial cells to the lesion in the brain where it's repairing that. And fluid is coming in to be able to wash out everything. And so I know my body's upgrading. And so I know this liquid state is helpful. And I lost my train of thought, but hopefully I've
well, no, and yeah, because I think I just want to go back and summarize a little bit of what you said too, because again, I think some people might have missed it, and this is why I'm interested. I got to go out to the website, take a look at some of the stuff, and look at this, because so here you had a man who was a doctor, his son gets shot and dies 4 months later as a result of complications from the gunshot wound, right? That's trauma. That's trauma. The doctor and the doctor's wife are both within a few months diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
I don't know that it was stage 4.
Or with cancer. So
yeah, and I don't actually know the exact time frame, but
we're both diagnosed after that event with cancer. Coincidence that both people? That's not a coincidence, right? And so I think it's interesting, and applaud the man for going back and saying, hold it, maybe there is something more to this, right? And going back and looking at 40,000 cases, right? And that again, I mean, unless it's trauma related, a lot of people's physical symptoms are caused by some sort of shock, conflict, or trauma that is still kind of carrying through. And so when we actually clear the shock, conflict, or trauma, our body tends to go back, right? Which to me, again, it's like, it's so amazing. And I'm going to go play with this a little bit too, because I'm like the guinea pig myself, right? But I mean, you've done it. You just shared an example, of how you were able to do that. And to me, it just, wow, right?
Yeah.
And even more so, the power of the mind on the body.
Where it somewhat gets confusing or complicated is because we're humans. People be like, everybody's dealing with trauma. Everybody's dealing with conflict. And that is correct. However, when we're dealing with multiple pieces of shock, conflict, or trauma, because it could happen on a daily basis in some environments, right? Yeah, when you're dealing with those things, it's hard to distinguish which one is which. And I had a point to this and I lost it. Maybe I wasn't supposed to say it. I don't know. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So it can be complicated because we may have more than one program going on at the same time. The other piece of that is, depending on how long the conflict's gone on. I mean, sometimes conflicts can happen in somebody's childhood, right? And so the conflict has never fully resolved. And so it's gone on for such a long period of time. And then depending on how healthy the person's body is, are they regulating? Because if we're regulating at 100%, we're able to take in toxins, we're able to take in things, and our body will use it whatever it needs, and then it spits out what it doesn't. And it's just regulating, right? If our body's not at that 100%, which because of the shock, trauma, and conflict is typically not, and then in our world today where we're just surrounded by toxins of pesticides and EMFs and you name it, right? Mm-hmm. So it clogs our system. Our systems aren't fully regulating. So then it takes longer. Once we do resolve it, it may take longer. We may experience symptoms like the flu for a longer period of time, or whatever our body is dealing with in the opposite of whatever it had to do, the cell loss, cell growth, so forth. It may take longer to resolve. And so in some people's minds that, that's a length of time and they want the pill. But at the end of the day, you take the pill, you're not resolving the initial issue in the first place. So it's still going to come up at some point, right? And now what are the side effects that you're going to have from that pill? Right? I mean, it's hilarious to me. I don't have TV, and I haven't had TV for years, but when they advertise medication, all the side effects. Well, why would I even want to even entertain that, right?
Yeah, because by the time they go through it, because I normally we don't watch regular TV unless it's like sporting events, but it's been football season, so I've been watching a lot of football, and yeah, when I get to the end of those pharmaceutical ads and they start talking about all of the side effects, it's like, why the fuck would you want to take that pill? Right? May cause anal bleeding, may cause, sudden death.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. It reminds me of an old Bill Cosby. Funny guy, did some bad things. Right. Separate the man's comedy from his personal character. But I remember one of his old skits that he did was, it was kind of like, think like an AA meeting, like this group of old guys sitting around kind of in a circle, talking, shooting the shit kind of thing, right? And so the one guy starts talking about, I started taking this medicine, but then it had these side effects. And so, then I got to start taking this medicine, but then that had this side effect. And then I had to start taking this one, blah, 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 right? And it's like, this guy was taking like 10 or 15 medicines because he was taking one to kind of get rid of one problem, right? And it's like, but I mean, joke, haha, funny. And that was probably back in the 80s when he did that. But look at people's lives now, right? And how many medications so many people are taking. And a lot of times those medications are to counteract side effects.
Right.
So what if you could find a different way of being able to do it that would work? So to me, again, it's hope for a better world that way from true healing standpoint.
Right. And there is a place for medication, and there is a place for the medical world. In the US, like if I had a catastrophic accident, there's no place I'd rather be than to be in a hospital here, right? And have medication that I need to help me through it right then and there. And there's times when you need the medication to assist you until you can work through whatever you've got. So there is a place for it. I won't say I'm completely anti-medication, but anti in a long-term only solution of medication. That I would much rather see somebody heal themselves and heal at the root, so that they don't have to have these relapses over and over.
Yeah. Well, no, this has been good, and you've kind of referred to a lot of these different modalities as well, too, right? That people can kind of go out, learn more about. And of course, obviously, everybody who's listening wants to reach out to Nina as well. I mean, she is a wealth of experience. We could be here for hours, talking about a lot of this stuff. But, I kind of wanted to go back as we kind of, have to wrap up for today, and just talk about maybe some, girl on a mission to heal yourself. You've been healing yourself, right? And maybe just a few things that have worked well for you, for other people that are sitting out there, whether it's a boy or a girl who happens to be wanting to heal. What are some kind of easy things that people can start trying to do to start some of the healing? Because I know a lot of people are in pain. And it's not just physical pain, right? There's a lot of people in emotional and mental anguish, as we talked about, post-pandemic. But for somebody who wants to start healing themselves, what are some things that you've done or that you suggest to people that are maybe some good starting points, or
Yeah,
at least things to try to see if it might work or help for you?
sure. Um, so my first recommendation would be breath work,
Hmm.
right? Like we breathe every day, we don't think about it, but oftentimes in that trauma, shock, or conflict, what do? We hold our breath. And then we continue in that pattern. And so we're not fully breathing in. We need that oxygen. So breath work is something you can easily do at home. There's apps for it. There's YouTubes on it. One of the forms of breath work, which is more of a therapy type that I'm training for, almost done with, is called emotional energetic release therapy. And it's circular breath. It's in and out through the mouth. And your subconscious is only going to allow you to release what's safe for you to release. And so in breath work, it allows your body to control. Your body's controlling and you're using the breath to work through, because these emotions, these traumas get stored in the body, right? And so you can release through breath work some of these traumas. And sometimes I'm not going to say you don't need a therapist, because sometimes you need somebody that's going to be there to help you work through it and push you, because sometimes things are agonizing and you don't want to work through it and you want to quit, but you really want to be able to work through it and push that on out. But there's easy daily breath work that you can do on your own. One of them that Wim Hof. A lot of people are familiar with Wim Hof with the ice baths and breath work and meditation. Some of his breath work is the breath in and out, but he breathes in through the nose, out through the mouth for 20 to 40 counts, and then you do a minute hold. And sometimes I'll do that in the morning, first thing when I wake up, and do 6 rounds of it. And it like my whole body feels like it's vibrating, like I feel like I can go on and tackle the day. So that's something easy that you can do on your own. Breath work, and as you want to get deeper into it and deeper layers, that's available, and there's all kinds of different breath work therapists out there today. So breath work is one, and just having a simple awareness of what's going on within your body. Like, what am I dealing with and what's going on around me, and how can I change my perception? Because it really comes down to the perception. If you're dealing with something, look at how can I change my perception around this that would make my body feel better. Is there a reason in why this event happened? What lesson can I pull from this? Just because the something happened, it's on your journey, right? And there's something there that you can pull from it, and just having that daily awareness of what's going on and what you can learn from it and how can you change your perception, that on a daily basis is really helped me and changed a lot of some of the pain and agony that I've put myself through, right? Mm-hmm. And then Dr. Bradley Nelson wrote a book called Emotion Code. I am certified in Emotion Code and in Body Code. But Emotion Code and Body Code, for that matter, you can do on yourself. And it's muscle testing. So your body inherently knows what's going on. And we can use muscle testing to tap into, talk to the subconscious mind, and then ask it questions. And Dr. Bradley Nelson, he's written a book, it's on audio, and then people can start doing this themselves and start releasing trapped emotions. So when we experience an event, if we don't process that emotion, right, it can get stored in our body, and we don't process it, whether we don't have the energy to, whether we don't have the interest to, whether or not we are not allowed to, or don't feel that it's safe for us to really express that emotion. And so it can get trapped in the body. And so releasing those trapped emotions is significantly helpful, and that can be done. I've done so many sessions on myself in Emotion Code. And which leads me to another point. When you're experiencing an emotion, let it flow, whatever it is. If it's anger and you need to get it out, put a towel in your mouth, take we use in our classroom, we'll use like a stick made of tape and just kind of beat a bag, like just get it out. cry, scream. It is express yourself in some way. When you first started, when you were telling me about music and that you're not a expert in music, but you held that class, which was phenomenal. One of the things that an astrologer told me to do is because I held everything in, I just shut up. And so I wasn't expressing. And so that was part of the issue with the pain in my body, was I wasn't expressing, I wasn't experiencing and letting those emotions go. And so he told me to start dancing and start painting as a form of expression. And so I've wanted to do some classes in that, because I'm not an artist by any means, but just putting color on paper, holy moly, is that healing. And then just dancing, like whatever. I have no rhythm. I don't like going to the clubs or anything, but just dancing, putting on music and just dancing to that rhythm and letting it out of the body. So expression in any form, whatever you're feeling, like being able to let it out so it's not stored in the body. That would be my other tip.
Yeah. Well, and those are great things. And again, they're nothing that really costs any money. I mean, you can go buy the book. It's probably like $20, but all the other stuff, I mean, if you have an Apple Watch, you've got a breathing app right on there, right? It's built into it. It's 7-Eleven breathing. So that even by itself, right? Because that's one of there's lots of different ways of doing breath work, but even if all you do is consciously like breathe deeper, or for like a minute, make sure that your exhale is longer than your inhale, even if you do nothing else, right? You don't have to go do one of the fancy things or whatever. For a minute or two a day, just have your exhales be consciously longer than your inhale, and you'll feel yourself calm down, right? So we all breathe anyway. We might as well just spend part of each day breathing more intentionally, right? It's kind of like that was the whole kind of purpose behind some of the music class that we did, right? It's like, you listen to music already. What if you just started using music intentionally a little bit each time a day, right? It's the intention behind it and being able to do it. But I love that, like you said, letting the emotion flow, scream into a pillow if you need to. Do it safe, obviously, right? Just like if you're gonna beat something,
not somebody else,
right? But even the awareness, and I think again, you've shared with us some of that as we've been talking about, right? That you not feeling the best right now, but you're, a lot of people, when you're feeling a little under the weather, a lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm sick, poor me," right? Where you
celebrate.
Now it's like you're celebrating, right? It's like, okay, my body's releasing something. If I've got a little bit of a fever, if I've got a runny nose, if I'm coughing, you're releasing something.
Diarrhea,
if you're crying, diarrhea, it's like even burping and farting. I mean, it's like
100%.
I mean, that's your body is processing and expelling things. So just changing your perception on it too, I think is a great thing. And like I said, these are, and let it flow. These are things that you can do, you can start doing today, right? Everybody that's listening. So, all right, Nina, anything else that you want to share, and how can people reach out to you? How's the best way to get in touch with you?
Facebook Self-Healing Collaborative Group would probably be the best. And one last thing that I'd love to share when you were talking about breathing and the out breath is the Heart Math Institute, the heart rate coherence. And one of the things that I love practicing every day is putting my hand over my heart and just focusing on that breath and increasing my exhale so that I slow down the heart, and then just experience gratitude and do that for 3 minutes. And it increases the heart brain coherence. It's been a powerful exercise that can be done all the time. And they say the benefits last for 6 hours every time you do that. So something I love to do.
Yeah. So if you look at that, if you did it for, we're awake about 18 hours a day, in theory, 16, 18 hours a day, you do it 3 times a day, you're kind of Got
Yeah.
your heart coherence for the whole waking hour. Well, and it's one of those things too. I mean, you can buy like little things, little electronic things to help you do it. But like you said, even just putting your hand on your heart and thinking about it and having the intention and breathing and trying to kind of connect your breath with your heart, right, is beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful in a lot of ways, and being grateful for that, because
Yeah.
without the breath and without that heart beating, we'd all be dead.
Exactly. Yeah. Gratitude, appreciation, care, and I think there's a fourth emotion that they suggest. But yeah, just having gratitude on a daily basis
Huge,
is a
huge,
powerful experience.
huge. Well,
Awesome.
Nina, thank you for coming on here. You are a wealth of
Absolutely.
knowledge, so I'm going to keep reaching out to you
Please do.
for
As are
for
you.
for more of this wisdom, because it's yeah, I got to get into that self-healing collaborative as well too, because I think it's
Awesome.
there's a couple of people that we know that are kind of talking about some of this kind of stuff and just sharing and helping, because there's a lot of modalities out there, and some things work better for some people than others do, but the only way that you're going to know is if you try, right? But if you try some of these things and see if it works for you. But I have not met a person who hasn't done some sort of breath work and had it work,
Yeah.
right? I mean, anybody who has done any intentional breathing, even just for a few seconds or a minute, you will literally feel a shift in your body and will feel
Oh,
better. It will work 100%. If it
yeah.
doesn't work, you tell me. I'll give you $100, right? Because
Right.
and I know you're lying to me at that point. Because
Right.
100% of the people that I know and that I've had do anything like that, it's like almost instantaneous. So,
Awesome.
well, Nina,
Thank
thank
you.
you, thank you. I really appreciate it, because a lot of people are going to get a lot of value from listening to your experience, what you're learning, and what you're sharing with everybody. So I'm grateful for you.
I'm grateful too. Thank you.
Thanks.